welcome back. We're now on episode 2. Hopefully, it's not too long. I haven't looked yet, but you may be in for either surprise or pain. Both are acceptable here. Listen in.
Moving on to Adversaries and Villains. What is the difference? Is there a difference? Let's find out.
After these short ads.
Well,
No.
Spinning burger on the screen. Maybe a few chocolate shakes.
Ooh.
And a kid looking at you going, yeah!
No. I need that orphan flesh. I am now very hungry.
Eat our cooked cow flesh!
Yes.
We season it with extra vinegar.
I'm growing increasingly hungry. Stop. God, yes. Adversary versus villain.
So, I would take that as adversary is specifically for the character, and villain is general.
Okay.
So, an adversary is, when you're playing lacrosse, adversary is Lord Jameson, who is attempting to take your number 1 place off of you. He's not being specifically malicious in, like, he's not actively harming people, but to your character, you believe that they are an opposition to be kind of pushed over and won against, really. And a villain is more, they have a specific goal which will irreparably damage your player's future. So when Lord Jameson wins lacrosse against you, that doesn't really affect your life as a whole. That's kind of like a small barrier that you needed to jump over. A villain wanting to destroy your house and your village, that will completely damage your future in a way that only a villain can. So, an adversary in media would kind of be, I don't know, the better student in a girl film. Like, she's kind of, she's not really malicious. She might be a bit snooty, but she's not really, like, coming after you specifically. It's more just like, oh, I've got to get better than her, And a villain villain is, I'm thinking kind of Disney, where in The Little Mermaid, Ursula wants to take I think Ursula's a really, really good villain. I think she's fantastic. She's fully rounded.
Yeah.
Like, she's got... the best villains are campy, I think.
I've got to agree. I think what you're more considering is the likability of a villain. Like a disgusting villain isn't fun, or isn't as much fun as one who is outgoing and outspoken and a fun character if they weren't the villain.
Yeah. I love a likable villain. I have a very, very, very soft spot for likable villains. Like, pretty much, like, all Disney villains who are kind of, like, displayful, and if that's a word, and, like, they're very sure of themselves, and, like,
Yeah.
God. Ursula is the one that sticks in my mind. Like, she's a villain because she wants to she doesn't want to. It's kind of like a side goal. Like, her mate, like in the song Poor Unfortunate Souls, her stated objective is to both help Ariel, but her more sinister goal, which will irreparably change her life, is to take her voice and to manipulate it in a way that she can, damage the Sea Kingdom, whatever. I've only really listened to Poor Unfortunate Souls. I haven't seen The Little Mermaid. I know generally what happens, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen it specifically. She is a fantastic villain because she is manipulative. She interacts with the character in a fantastic way, and she knows what she can do to stop the villain, to stop the protagonist, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Woof, a lot of talking.
Yeah. I think looking at like the adversary versus villain again quick, just to me the adversary is say you are a good party, a good aligned party. The adversary could also be good aligned and is competitive, some form of rival, but not necessarily a genuine opposition to your life goals. They are like a minor opposition who it's probably a friendly opposition. May not be. They may be a rival adventuring party that's, stealing up all the good quests before you can get there, or I don't know, maybe they're maybe they're like a shopkeep and you're trying to open up your own shop and they have already founded their shop and are well established and therefore view you as their adversary because you're now in opposition. But you're not, unless you're evil, you're probably not going to be killing them. Whereas then...
Is that what separates an adversary versus a villain?
Not necessarily.
If you don't want to kill them, they're not technically a villain.
Not necessarily, because you can choose not to kill villains.
Yeah.
I think generally we do kill villains. That's what tends to happen. The villain is, if you're a good aligned party, in a typical story, the villain is probably evil, and they are directly opposing your goals, or you are trying to oppose theirs even, because what they're doing is detrimental to you or your ideals on a larger scale than the adversary.
They say the best villains are the ones which think that they are the good guys.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. So it's like we can talk about storytelling in another episode.
Yeah.
But a good villain is one which completely believes in their actions, who believes that their actions are the right ones to be taking. So, like I don't know, where was I going? I keep on doubting myself. I am my own villain.
You are. Are you your villain or an adversary?
I'm a villain. I want to kill.
Nice. Ooh. Too hot for the YouTubes.
That's why I didn't finish my sentence.
Yep. Oh my.
Oh my god.
That was spicy.
Yep.
Ooh.
What was my point? I don't know. We can talk about how to make a good character in another thing. Like how to write a good story.
Yeah.
But
we could even do a separate thing on good villains.
Yeah. But yeah, the villain's role is to be the larger threat. An adversary is more just a small threat, meant to define and shape a character.
Yeah. To me, like going back to good villains, believing in what they're doing, I think also good villains, you should meet more than once. In the mega dungeon that I'm currently running, the closest to a real villain is the administrator. He is very friendly to you guys. Ultimately, he did kidnap you all in your sleep and drag you into a who knows how large dungeon on another plane of existence.
Yeah, that's a very villainous act.
Yeah, but he's nice to you and is trying to help you in several ways. He is recurring and can have a conversation with the party, but is still ultimately the villain.
Yeah, you haven't really portrayed him as villainous, really.
No.
Although objectively, his actions prove otherwise.
Yeah. And that's because, as far as you can tell anyway, he believes in what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's a good guy, really.
Yeah. We can change him. We
Maybe.
just need to crack that thick shell of his.
Yeah, that porcelain theatre mask he wears.
Yeah. We just need to... We can change him, guys.
Yeah. That's definitely Barry's train of thought. Actually,
I mean,
wonder. Yeah. In sincerity, is that Barry's train of thought?
He recognises that... So, Barry, he is a very much a... Let's make a team. We're better together. We can do this. Whether or not they want to form the team is a different matter. But that's what his main goal is. I think that he believes the administrator is well above. He's kind of like the referee. Okay. You can't make friends with the referee.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, I think even in that sense, making the villain out of the party's reach for a long time can also make them an interesting villain, because for a while at least they don't feel threatened by the party, and therefore the party can get to know this villain more closely because they're dealing with them for a longer time.
Yeah. And there's the problem of how do you portray the villain to the characters unless you are specifically putting the villain in front of the characters.
Yeah.
So if you have some kind of like stone of sending, which transmits the villain's voice and image to the characters, that puts them at a far enough distance where the villain can reasonably just say, "Oh, it's not worth the bother to go and kill them," or whatever their intention is to stop the party. But if you have the villain appear in front of the party, well, it's either the party attack them, or the villain wrecks the party, or a third option where the villain gets away just before the party can attack them, which often feels a bit blue-balling.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, the administrator kind of does that, but not quite.
We're not actively trying to attack them.
Yeah.
Attack the administrator.
I think someone did. When you first met him, someone tried throwing something at him, or doing something to see if he was there. Because the way he shows up so often without being attacked, if they wanted to try and attack him, is he isn't physically there most of the time. Same with the way the town works in this mega dungeon. It's not physically there, but it's kind of projected there. And so, there's no physical interaction until that side wants there to be.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. It's a problem old as literature. No, not really. It's a problem old as D&D, where how do you make the villain known to the players and an active threat?
Yeah.
Without the party being able to kill the villain.
Yeah. I think another good solution is henchmen.
Ooh, yeah. Kind of like a Pokemon thing.
Yeah. Like the villain themselves. They are high up above the party, probably. Or at least they view themselves that. The party, at least to start with, is a minor threat. So, you're not going to go there yourself to deal with them. You send your second in command, or your second in command's second in command, or down the chain until you get to a figure of authority within that chain of command that is on par with the party. And that's who the party interacts with most of the time. They deal with their henchmen, and then they deal with that figure of authority and learn that the trail goes back further. There's someone higher up and higher up and higher up, and they aren't necessarily dealing with the main dude, the main person. They're dealing with someone far lower down. but they learn about this villain from this lower character, and so they find that there's more to it.
You have just brought up an excellent example, I believe, which is, so in the Pokemon world, we often see Team Rocket, which is Jesse and James, as the villains. However, there is Giovanni, who runs the entire operation. Which do you prefer more? Giovanni or Team Rocket?
I think Team Rocket is a lot more memorable.
Because we spend a lot more time with Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Like, if the Giovanni is kind of like literally the guy stroking his cat in wherever beggar off place, because we get to spend so much time with Team Rocket, they become extremely, and like even their personality, like we get a lot more affectionate with them, and again with it's who the players choose to interact with, and how they interact with them, which makes them memorable. Team Rocket often have like daring escapades and like over the top plans, which are eventually thwarted, but they always come back again with another fantastic solution to their never-ending problem.
Yeah. I think the henchman is a very good option for the recurring villain, even because they're the villain themselves is the main villain probably won't be seen for a while, but the henchmen are going to be coming back and should be known to the party, even if they don't end up coming back. But they should be the threat for a while. And I think Team Rocket coming back every time to try a new solution is a good example of getting to know the minor villain as opposed to the greater villain.
Yeah. And honestly, I would consider Team Rocket to be more significant than Giovanni, honestly.
Yeah.
Because they are the people who the viewer of Pokemon get to know. Like, we could care less about Giovanni.
Yeah.
Like, we want to get to know Team Rocket. So I would consider them the greater and more fleshed out and better written villain, honestly.
Yeah, I've got to agree.
So it doesn't really matter how much of a villain they are. It completely depends on how they are written and how they are portrayed.
Yeah.
Which is how villainous... Well, Team Rocket aren't really seen as villainous. They're more seen as like nuisances and recurring things.
Yeah.
But they must always be overcome, which I think puts them at a good villain stance and not really adversary.
Yeah. I think they ride that line of adversary versus villain.
Yeah.
They probably do fall into the villain category, but they come close to being an adversary in that sense. They are still opposed to the adventuring party, as it were, on a grander scale than just a minor thing. But they aren't a hugely significant threat. So I'd say they still are the villain, or a villain, but they do serve a somewhat adversarial role as well.
Yeah. Carry a lot more weight, personally.
Yeah.
So, is that all we have to say about that?
I think that's pretty much all the types of NPCs.
Yeah.
We do kind of have a strange one that somewhat falls into this of DMPCs / NPCs in the party, which I'd argue are both the type.
Story about DMPCs, which Bailey will vibe with.
I've got a note on it here.
So, DMPCs are NPCs which are controlled by the DM. Rightfully used, which we will go into, I'm sure that they can be good. However, there was one situation where we had a DM who I think he was okay most of the time, but the final fight of the whole situation of, like, good versus bad, it didn't involve the PCs. It involved 2 DMPCs battling it out while we had to sit there and watch.
Yeah. It was the villain, what was his name? The villain Harry versus the DMPC Dumbledore.
Which I think we're expected to sit there in awe of the power of the 2 of them.
Yeah.
But when you are not involved in it, so on the TV screen, when you see these grand displays of power, you're like, wow, pretty colours.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there watching die be rolled, and he's like, oh God, go Dumbledore, no, Harry's winning. Who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
I want to play me character. Me character is one I play.
Yeah.
Play character for me. Continue story without me character.
Yeah.
That's the pitfall of the NPCs. You are not the focal point of the story, you DM. You carry the story.
Yeah.
You continue the story. You are not the one to be entertained. You can be entertained by the PCs. You are not the one meant to be changing the story.
Yeah. If a DM wants to take that approach of making their DMPC the main character, then they should be writing a book.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Go do it somewhere else where other players don't have to sit there and watch you pleasure yourself about how amazing your characters are.
Love the pause. Love the pause.
I mean, I am gonna use it. You being that kind of person in the way that you are making your character sit there while you play the game is very masturbatory, I believe. It's very self-serving. You're not doing anything for anyone except for yourself.
Yeah.
You are only giving yourself pleasure and being able to play the game the way it's meant to be played. No, that is not how you play the game. Insert Shigeru Miyamoto meme. That is not how the game is meant to be played.
Fantastic meme reference.
Thank you.
That was a great use of it. Yeah.
It's
important.
completely masturbatory when that happens.
Yeah.
I love that word. It's an actual word.
Yeah. It's a very apt word for this situation. Because the thing is, in that situation, it's important to distinguish. We didn't encourage that situation to occur.
No.
It can be a good situation that the party can enjoy if it's a DMPC or an NPC that they've enjoyed, invested in, and they've encouraged that situation to come up. They went and asked, mega powerful wizard NPC to create a distraction by fighting this particular character whilst they go off and do something. That can be fine. NPCs taking, or even DMPCs going off and doing something on their own without the rest of the party can work if it was the party's idea.
Yeah. And the thing is, with that situation, you shouldn't need to act out the actual fight. You should think, okay, so Wizard is attacking other villain guy. What is the situation which would create the most interesting story beat?
Yeah, it
for
becomes
the players?
Narrative at that point.
Yeah, so like while the players are off rolling, wherever, if one of the characters goes, "Oh, how's the Wizard getting on?" you should be able to verbally say, like, you should mentally judge. Okay, so we need the Wizard to be on their last foot, so the players can be like, "Oh, we need to hurry up." So you're like, okay, so the Wizard Gargamel, he seems to be struggling at the moment. The opposition villain woman person stock character
Succinct name.
is beating them, and you don't think the Wizard is going to last much longer. That is fantastic in the way that it creates tension. It creates a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But you don't need to do anything in the way of, okay, so wizard cast fireball, wizard cast cage of force. Who the hell cares?
Yeah.
They're holding off the villainess. That's all they need to do.
Yeah. Play-by-play of the mechanics of that fight aren't interesting to the party. What the party wants to know is, where's the fight up to? What's happening from a narrative standpoint?
Yeah.
And I think that's all you really need to consider. Having the party sit there and watch it happen is dull.
I don't feel like it's a very relatable moment, but just in case that happens, like, I'm not sure how many players have actually sat through a DM fight,
Yeah.
self-fight, but just as a warning, don't, or I will come for you and I will kill you.
Yeah. Just flip the table and leave as a player. Just do that. Works every time.
Honestly, like, either tell the DM I'm not enjoying this, or like leave if the DM's being stubborn. Like, no, this needs to happen. That's a sucky situation. Come back next session once the fight has been over and done with. You've got a better use for your time.
Yeah.
You came to play D&D, not watch someone else play D&D.
Yeah. I think the important part is this is a multiplayer game, and the party should be involved more than spectators.
Yeah. And on that point, D&D is a multiplayer game. Try not to focus on one character too much.
Yeah.
I haven't personally experienced it, but if you are sitting... Well, not much, or not that I can't remember. If you, as a player, are sitting there while, I don't know, Rhaegar the Beautiful is getting all the attention, and it's like that for multiple sessions, like, Rhaegar the Beautiful is getting most of the story beats and most of the NPC interactions and most of the, oh, this is happening to you. That's a bad situation.
Yeah.
Find another game.
Yeah. It's, I think, like, spinning it back to types of NPCs, especially if it's if that situation is occurring to the DMPC or the NPC in the party. Those characters should not be the focus, and if they are, it shouldn't be for very long.
No. We need to actually talk about DMPCs because I've been skirting around bad times of it.
Yeah. I mean, we've made some good points, I think, on what not to do with DMPCs or NPCs in the party.
But they sound incredibly negative now.
They do. So that's a bad example. I think this probably could get split two ways here. There's DMPCs and then there's generally NPCs in the party. So first, DMPCs. We've kind of talked about what not to do. When do you think they are okay?
I think they are okay when it's... So I just coming up with the definition in my head now, I would think that a DMPC actually has a stat block. Yeah. They are able to act within the world of the game, and they are actively able to be mechanically controlled by the DM.
Yeah. To me, a DMPC is one that is essentially a player character sheet that the DM controls. That is how I define a DMPC.
Yeah. I think a DMPC is good when possibly you are running out of interesting fights to have, so you call in a bit of backup. Or, so if you want a really hard fight, but you don't believe that the party is going to be able to actually fight in the fight, possibly bring in like some kind of mercenary or NPC that was previously docile to help in the fight. So, if they really, really, really want to go up against a Mind Flayer, that's a bad example. Really, is that a bad example? How high CR are Mind Flayers?
Is it CR 11? I'd have to check.
Oh, it's a good example then.
Yeah,
If they
they're pretty
really
tough.
want to go up against a Mind Flayer, then maybe bring in a bit of backup. If you are afraid the Mind Flayer is just going to absolutely wreck them. So in that case, it serves as enjoyment for the players, so it can enhance their experience by allowing them to access more of the game.
Yeah. Mind Flayer
What?
CR7, not 11. I was
Oh,
wrong.
okay. How dare you?
No, I should
Well,
know
point
this.
still stands.
Yeah.
What situations would you say are useful? Because I can't really think of any.
Yeah. Well, I think just comparing your point that you made to the previous point before are bad examples. In your situation that you just described, the party gets to participate. They may be way out of their league, but they still get to do something actively with backup that is then probably doing a fair bit of the work, or should probably focus more on support.
Yeah.
Either the party would all need healing because they're going to be taking a ton of damage, and so this DMPC is a super good healer so that the party doesn't all TPK, or they have a ton of hit points but no damage. Like they're a barbarian that just focused on tanking. So they can take all the damage to allow the party to then be the ones doing the damage to the opponent so that they are the ones making progress without the super high risk of TPKing.
Yeah, it makes it so that more of the game can be accessed by the players, which it's your choice whether or not you want to allow them to access it, but if they do and you think they're underprepared, I think doing what I said is a viable option as long as it's not stealing spotlight from the players.
Yeah. I think making an ultra powerful character who is going to be the one taking the kills and, defeating the enemy whilst the party plinks away little bits, that's not going to be as fun. I think the focus should be that it's still the party doing the main work, but this character is playing a powerful but still supporting role.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that scenario should be widely used. I think it should be like once per campaign.
Yeah.
Because it should be the party doing things on their own merit without much assistance. It's only really if you want to throw something out of their league at them, which shouldn't happen very often.
No. I think one other situation for a DMPC is with a new party, with new players who haven't really played before. Making a DMPC, again, I think it should be a supporting role, but that DMPC should be somewhat to explain some of the mechanics of the game, maybe, or more to make sure that this new party doesn't die because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Having them be like a paladin so that they can do a bit of healing, a bit of tanking, cover the supporting and more dangerous roles in the party, so that the new players don't feel the pressure of dying session one because they don't know how it works.
Yeah. That's a good example. That's a really lovely situation to use a DMPC in.
Yeah. Outside of that, though, don't really think there's a lot of situations there should be DMPCs in.
No.
I mean, maybe if it's a really small party, like all the situations I'm able to think of here are the DMPC supporting the party in some way. If it's a really small party and they couldn't afford to therefore grab a healer as one of the party members, then maybe a DMPC doing that. But even then...
But the thing is, even then, I would make it so that there is some way, even if it's like really weak, for the party to independently support themselves. Maybe give them like a small like staff of healing, which is like properly nerfed, like to give them more options.
I think
in
there
order
are
to
better alternatives to the
themselves.
DMPC. Yeah.
It shouldn't be widely used, I don't believe.
No.
Unless it's if they're stealing spotlight from the PCs, stop.
Yeah.
Stop immediately. And
Yeah.
by spotlight, I mean they shouldn't be the one going through the emotional arcs. They shouldn't be the one killing all the baddies. They shouldn't be the ones solving all the problems.
No. I think they should have minimal opinions. Like, they shouldn't be suggesting the route that the party should be taking. They shouldn't make such suggestions. They should only really parrot back the information the party has said aloud, because if you as the DM are making party decisions from inside the party, it's kind of a biased decision that you're making.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't really be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else is there to talk about?
With DMPCs, don't think there's a great deal more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of these situations we've come across, none of them should have the DMPC be a long-term character in the party.
No, not at all.
They either start with the party or they join them later, depending on which option it was. But they shouldn't stay forever. They should eventually find a reason to leave or move on and do something else outside the party. They can still exist in the world, but they should play a short-term supporting role, I think.
Yeah. The PCs are a valuable resource. Don't go diluting the pot.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So in that case, like on a different note, but still quite similar, NPCs within the party.
NPCs within the party should be very much, unless they are specifically made to be an obstruction. So, in the terms of the cartographer, they should not be an obstruction. They have a certain role to play in the party, and that's it. However, if you have, say, a lost child that you need to deliver to another village, it could be funny and interesting if that child had very, very, very specific needs, which could possibly annoy the rogue and like force different reactions out of the characters. It shouldn't be obstructing to the way where it's unfun. So like the child absolutely won't let the paladin stay in their line of sight. Although that could be fun. But if it's limiting to the characters, it shouldn't really be done. But like if the rogue has to steal themselves in front of a vomiting baby, I think that's fun.
Yeah, I think NPCs in the party. Well, how do they come up? I think the example you're giving is kind of like they're a delivery quest or an escort quest. So they're temporarily with the party whilst you get from A to B. They could even be a guide in that sense. What else? What other situations? I mean, I guess in a similar way to one of the DMPC options, they could have been hired. They could be mercenaries that the party decided to hire to support them. Although I'd be wary of doing something like that, just because, again, it detracts from the party's spotlight. Having the NPCs be too powerful detracts from the fact that the party are the heroes and should be doing most of the action.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other situation I can think of is, again, in the Mega Dungeon, Jeoffered and Spanner.
Okay, so Jeoffered is he's a small runt of a person that we kind of picked up and adopted in our party.
Yeah.
And Jeoffered the Spanner is just a kobold who's tagging along. My opinion on Jeoffered is he is acting as not necessarily a foil, but he's acting as an enhancement for one of our characters currently. So Jeoffered is an unskilled, cowardly person who our wizard is kind of forming into a wizard. and a spellcaster, and an ample spellcaster at that.
Yeah.
Which, in terms of story development, kind of allows the wizard to show off their character in the way that they are kind of wanting to sprout the seeds of magic and, share their craft with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so Jeoffered, to me, when I was starting out writing ideas for the campaign, I saw that the administrator is an NPC who is above the party. He is comparably, unfathomably powerful. You don't know how powerful. He is very clearly more powerful than the party. And to counterbalance that, I felt like there should also be NPCs, at least one, who are lesser than the party, because then it creates an interesting dynamic where the party is subservient in some way to a greater power, but then also a separate dynamic where the party is lording over something that's subservient to them. So in the first dungeon section that you went into, I decided to have, so it was a null themed section, and so I decided to have one of the nulls not actually be a null, but instead be pretty much a peasant who was pretending to be one to hide and stay alive.
Yeah.
And that was Jeoffered. Remind us, Lewis, how you met Jeoffered, please.
Okay. Well, there seems to be a theme thinking about it of how I meet NPCs. My character chucked a javelin at Jeoffered and pinned him to a wall. And I think he was bleeding out and unconscious, but I healed him with my lay on hands.
Yeah.
And he came to consciousness, I believe, while still pinned to the wall.
Yeah. You didn't remove the javelin or tend to the wound.
Yeah. And that was before my character was fully fleshed out, so he was kind of just neutral to Jeoffered.
Yeah.
Whereas now he is a very, very much a team player, where he would be encouraging of Jeoffered actively.
Yeah. I think this was session 2, so you were still kind of feeling out the character.
Well, the thing is, I'm playing a -2 intelligence conqueror paladin, which, when I think of conquering, I think an intelligent person actively manipulating people. So it's an odd dynamic to come up with a backstory for. However, I have come up with it in a way that he is wanting to constantly build a party of people that he can trust and command and not use, but kind of use. Kind of like herding dogs.
Yeah.
Like you train them, you make them subservient to you. If any of them fall out of line, you punish them accordingly.
Yeah. I think dogs is a good example.
Yeah. It's overall a friendly situation, but any resistance is met with kind of rebuke, so to say.
Yeah. It's when things are fine, everyone's happy. But when things get rough, it is about making sure that they're aware you're in charge, not them.
Yeah. And that they need to restore balance to the morale of the party. Which brings me to another NPC that we had, which was kind of a PNPC, DMPC, I should say, which was an Orog, which we were battling.
Yeah.
And this Orog came with his friend and attacked us. And this Orog was killed after his friend. Well, not killed, was put unconscious after his friend. And when I revived the Orog, he found that our druid of the party was eating his friend, which automatically put a negative precedent on this party.
Yep.
However, my paladin was an intimidating enough presence that he stayed with us for quite a long time, acting as another step block for us to attack with and use and abuse. Well, I didn't really abuse him. It was more he had it in his head that I could easily kill him, which I could.
Yeah. He understood facing, even going one-on-one with any of the frontliners, such as yourself, he wouldn't get out alive. Orogs are fairly smart. He understood that his life was in the balance, and retaliating against you would probably result in his death.
Yeah, which, actually, getting onto that, Barry was wise enough to know that the Orog would eventually betray them. However, he let loose his mental, okay, we need to keep an eye on the Orog, for 1 second, and instantly the Orog attacked the spellcaster wizard and started running away. Yep. Which meant that as soon as Barry found out about that, the Orog would be punished accordingly, which was an awful sight.
Yeah.
Can you say it, please? I don't want to say it. I am kind of a horrific player.
You've done some horrific things.
I've done some really bad things.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand it was the Orog had been with you guys through a whole dungeon section, and you guys had just left it. Were in like the intermediate corridor leading to the next rest point before you go on to the next dungeon, and there was a random encounter kind of thing with an enemy further down this corridor, quite a ways, with a ranged weapon, and so the frontliners decided to charge up and found that there were this random encounter had its own frontliners, so there was a bit of a tangle there, and as the party does, the wizard was trying to persuade the random encounter's backliner to stop fighting and talk this out. So Barry decided to call the Orog's assault off. So he stopped, he walked back, he waited, and then when it was clear that the persuasion wasn't working, the frontliners of the party, that's Barry and Wolf, you and Shiv, charged forward towards this ranged attacker and left the Orog back with the rest of the party, which is a wizard, a sorcerer, and Jeoffered and Spanner, 2 NPCs who aren't very tough and aren't going to fight. So this 1 second that Barry wasn't looking, the Orog took it as an opportunity, knocked the wizard out with like 1 round of attacks, and then began to run back down the corridor the way they came to hopefully get away from the party. Eventually, after some shouting back and forth, Barry and Wolf up front learned about this, turned around, Wolf being a druid, turned into a giant eagle so that he could fly at tremendous speed, picked up Barry and darted back, passing over the unconscious wizard, and eventually catching up to the Orog before brutalizing and beating him unconscious.
Yeah. And this is the next bit's the bit that I didn't want to speak of because I feel awful.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
I think the important thing to note is that during the random encounter fight, the Orog had been bitten by a death dog and was therefore diseased. He was beginning to feel sickly. He was poisoned. So once he was knocked unconscious, I believe Barry stripped him of his plate mail and made sure that he was lying on his front as he hog-tied him. and dragged him across the stone floor back to the rest of the party, several hundred feet.
It's what Barry would do.
It
It is exactly what Barry would do. So I feel justified in that way, but it's such a horrendous thing. Like the way you described it.
Yeah. As Barry, the rest of the party eventually made it to the rest point, which is just a circular room that's a bit larger than the corridor. Same style though, and it has a bonfire in the middle. Very Dark Souls-esque. So Barry leant the Orog against a wall and brought him back to consciousness, I believe, with a little bit of healing.
I used my command to make him cry.
Yeah, you shoved a rag in his mouth and made him cry with command to make him feel bad. But he is, at this point, quite ill and sickly looking, and so as he's crying, there's also pus pouring out of his eyes, soaking into the rag.
Christ.
It was not a pretty sight. And once the command was over and his tears had dried, eventually, after several grillings and intimidations, he was a very broken man, and just zoned out completely. He became a blank slate of accepting that this is hell and that he is probably dying soon, because Barry was not happy with him.
No, not at all.
No.
And the thing is, during this time, when the Orog is sitting in the corner, cut and bruised and ill, Jeoffered had learned his first spell.
Yeah.
So, we were kind of celebrating that, and the thoughts that were going through Barry's head is, the Orog is going to keep us from feeling happy, feeling accomplishment and happiness. So Barry eventually dragged the Orog into one of the side halls and killed him. And for my own edification, for my own peace of mind, I cast a non-existent spell slot of command to make him feel happy before he got beheaded.
Nice.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I think it's a great character moment, but I feel awful.
Yeah. It makes sense for Barry. But as a good aligned human being, I can imagine you're feeling bad.
I feel awful.
Yeah. The interesting
also, don't take
thing
good aligned, that's not a real thing.
Sure. The interesting thing is, the party doesn't know...
I'm chaotic evil, guys. I'm, edgy.
Yeah, sure.
I'm against establishment.
Sure you are.
Making fun of people, obviously.
Nice. Of course you are.
Yeah.
The party doesn't know what Barry did. The last bit of that, anyway. The party... I think the only hint that they have is that the wizard's familiar watched Barry drag the Orog away and then return without the Orog. That is the most that the party knows, and even then, I've only given that information to the wizard, so that, the wizard's player anyway, and that information has not been passed on. So, at the moment, only the familiar knows that you had any part in it, Barry.
Yeah. Again, the Orog was simply an enemy. We were the ones who made them interesting.
Yeah.
Jeoffered was just a normal NPC. We were the ones who invested in him and made him into a wizard. You can't control what people will do.
Yeah. I think it's important to know, I don't think I forced either of these characters onto you guys.
No.
I presented them as people that were here. Jeoffered was an interesting character that I thought, I didn't know what you would do with him. I just thought it would be interesting to see what, especially for with it being such an early on session, to understand the party. I had a character who was higher than them and a character that was lower than them. And I wanted to see how they'd all interact with these people. And you decided to, or at least the wizard decided to take Jeoffered with you. I didn't really assume that was going to happen. I knew that it was an option, and I therefore just gave him commoner stats, but I didn't think that he'd be getting trained in wizardry.
Yeah. Which you've kind of expedited for the sake of giving us the satisfaction of being able to create our own wizard.
Yeah, like having him spend several years learning to become a wizard in this dungeon, it's not going to happen. So I created a quicker system for him to learn wizardry. He is human, so I let the first training part. It took a good 10 sessions, I think, of training
Took
Jeoffered.
a long time.
Yeah, and he, as part of that training, became a level 0 wizard, essentially. He got to roll stats so that he didn't have commoner stats, and he got to take the feat Magic Initiate as part of like a human variant. And then there's now a whole other training system for him becoming a level 1 wizard, which he is on his way to doing.
Yeah. So NPCs have really been a large part of the Mega Dungeon.
Yeah.
Considering that we as a party seem to be very sociable.
Yeah.
Except for the Druid.
Well,
and kind of the Dragonborn. What's his face? No one knows his name. Gassans.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah. I think it's largely, like, this style of play is largely due to Igor's recent decision to make, what's the word I'm looking for? Very negotiating characters who don't always look towards just finishing a combat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then kind of Barry playing off of that, being one who then has interactions with these characters on a more personal, controlling level.
It's their fault that they're intimidated by Barry.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
He is a lovable, nice guy, I believe.
He is. I think he is.
Yeah. It's just, stuff's got to be done when stuff goes down.
It's true. But this style of, I made a mega dungeon, right? This was your one opportunity to just be complete murder hobos. And you decide to flip the tables and go the complete opposite and do what I expect you to do in a normal game. You've just thrown it all out the window, and I love it. It has meant that
we are making our own party.
You are.
Good. We've got 2 summoners, a guy who wants to have many people with him.
Yeah.
And a druid who, does his own thing. He has his own deal.
Summon. He can summon if he wants to.
Well, he doesn't really.
No.
Much.
He could.
He could.
Yeah. It has gotten to the point now where I have a name for every NPC that can speak in that campaign.
Just in case.
Just in case. Even the enemies that you're fighting, just in case. Because that seems to be the approach you're taking. In fact, you never got the Orog's name.
I think I was meaning to ask him it, but there was never a good time.
No, it wasn't really an opportunity where you felt very chummy.
No.
Yeah, but I think NPCs in the party, we've given a lot of examples here, but the important takeaway is the party initiated those situations. I think NPCs shouldn't really be in the party unless it's part of like an escort quest, or they're a guide, or, as these situations have described, the party has initiated that and tried actively to involve these NPCs.
Yeah.
In many ways, shouldn't be pushing them.
In many ways, NPCs are created, not born, which is kind of a bastardization of the old adage, heroes are created, not born. But, yeah. I mean, NPCs are heroes in their own right. They are the people who fill out the story.
Yeah.
If it weren't for NPCs, there would be barely a story.
Yeah. I think
they
particularly...
are there to create different like dynamics and situations and just everything for the players to do and see if you are not trying hard enough to do your NPCs, you are leaving a hole in the story, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, with this mega dungeon, because it is a mega dungeon and there is no, from what you can tell anyway, no outside, you're able to visit quote unquote town, this kind of extra dimensional alien town where you can buy and sell things once every week. So the presence of NPCs in the dungeon itself, such as Jeoffered, the Orog, Spanner, it creates a good opportunity, especially if they're accompanying the party in this situation, because the party asked them to or forced them to. Creates a good opportunity for the players to express their characters.
Yeah.
Like, Jeoffered doesn't speak unless someone speaks to him. He doesn't. He doesn't really do anything unless someone speaks to him or initiates interaction with him. The Orog, although he was somewhat adversarial to the party, in a sense, he was not there willingly. He still didn't force any. I mean, he could speak common, but he didn't. He chose not to talk even. He just acted when he was directed to act, and that was about the extent of it. The NPCs in the party are there to play off of the players, player characters, and they're not there for doing their own thing as much. I think it comes back to what I said about DMPCs of they shouldn't be making party decisions.
Yeah, Jeoffered and the Orog, unless directed to, the Orog was mostly going in first, are never the first people to enter a room and start interacting.
No.
Neither should the NPCs. Neither should any NPC unless it makes sense. Like an accountant is introducing the party to their master. They shouldn't be creating any dynamic for the party to play off of. It should be the party who initiate all things that they. It should be the party who decides how things go.
Yeah.
Most of the time, anyway.
Most of the time.
There are obviously exceptions.
There's always exceptions.
As a general rule, it is, unless you have a specific story that you believe is going to be ideal for the players to be told, the players should be the ones who are of their own volition doing most of the talking.
Yeah. I think NPCs are reactive, not proactive.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think in a similar vein, NPCs, particularly in the party, are so long as the players have initiated that and are the ones pushing for the NPC to be in the party, are a good opportunity for the players to roleplay in a circumstance where they don't necessarily want to roleplay with the rest of the party, or the party isn't as involved in getting into character and role-playing within the party.
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity as a soundboard, kind of, for that player to be role-playing in character.
It's easier for the brutish fighter to bully a no-name NPC than it is for them to roleplay bullying the rogue. Because with the no-name NPC, you feel like you're destroying a relationship. If it's... wait, did I get that the wrong way around? If you're bullying the rogue, it feels like you're harming a relationship. If you're bullying the no-name NPC, it's a lot easier to be kind of self-responsive.
I think it's ultimately, this is a game, and it is easier to interact with these formless characters than it is to interact with another party member that is specifically attached to a player.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can be hard to detach player from character. And so, especially if it's going to be a negative interaction, or even a romantic interaction, you may not feel comfortable doing that with another party member, but doing it with a formless NPC that the DM is controlling, but that isn't the DM's character, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. It's just easier to roleplay.
Yeah.
Because the DM, if they're solid in themselves at least, they should know that you're not shouting at them, you're shouting at the little old lady who won't give you their purse.
Yeah. Damn little old ladies.
Honest God. Damn 47.
Number 47.
Anyway, is there anything else we need to talk about? Or want to talk about? I mean, we're not being forced. Definitely. Don't listen to the coordinates that are being drawn on the screen right now.
Nope.
You should not find us there.
Yes. It's not as though we're being threatened in any way.
Not at all.
No.
Well, okay. Now that Bailey's gone, I think we should probably end the episode. Thank you for watching. I hope that...
I've been brought back because I remembered there's a little bit more to talk about.
Thank goodness.
God. Only 17 stab wounds.
Okay.
Should have seen the other guy.
Yeah. Caesar salad.
Yeah. Just tomatoes everywhere.
Honestly.
Yeah. I think
let us out. Let us out.
That's amazingly terrible in every way. Yeah. Just a little bit more to talk about to push this on even further, because we need that. We need it to be over 3 hours. That's necessary.
Sure, of course.
Yep. Kind of, we started on step 1 of building an NPC, talking about the types, which we've covered. The next kind of things are really just what is the bare minimum that an NPC needs once you've decided what type of NPC they are, and what would you prefer to give them ideally?
What do you mean by prefer to give them?
So, I think first looking then at what's the bare minimum, and then we can look at how that works.
So I've said it before. If I am splitting this up, it's probably in the previous episode. I've said that I believe that all NPCs should have at least one character trait. Should that be they're clumsy, they stutter, they're Australian, they are rude, they have Tourette's, they are limping, whatever. They need to have one thing that a player can specifically point out in a crowd, and, well, not in a crowd, can point out and say, okay, that's what they have going on. Like, you can have bland NPCs, but I don't think they're fun.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you're gonna encounter an NPC, which is gonna give you information, it's more fun to have her in a Valley Girl, like cowboy kind of thing, or chucking a bunch of analogies at you.
Yeah.
Rather than just someone who's blankly telling you where the caves are or where the hostages are.
Yeah. I think that falls into more preferred. That's what a good NPC would have. I think the bare minimum would probably be, they don't even necessarily need a name, but I think a name is good, and the relevant information for their type of NPC. So if they're the quest giver, you need what is their quest, what are they offering? If they're the shopkeep, what do they sell, for how much? If they're expositionary, what information do they have? What information do they not have?
I get you.
Yeah, I think that's the bare minimum you need, is a name and something relevant to the type of NPC they are.
Okay.
But then definitely preferred, I think, for a good NPC that's going to be interesting for the party is some kind of quirk or trait or characteristic that's unique.
Yeah, they don't necessarily need to be memorable or like even stick in their mind for 10 seconds after the interaction.
Yeah,
It just needs to spice up the interaction between the player and the
yeah,
NPC in a way that they don't feel like it's a waste of time. Well, it doesn't, not necessarily, it needs to feel like they are, something's happening while they're talking to them,
yeah. Something that
I
makes that
guess.
interaction fun in the moment.
Yeah. It's like junk food. Like the point of eating junk food is to get that instant spark of like, yeah. Like
Yeah,
if
immediate gratification.
yeah.
Yeah, I think then, so the preferred, you definitely still need the bare minimum, but you need, or you probably want something that makes them interesting in some way, or more than just this is a person who has a name and information.
Yeah.
Something that dictates the way that they interact with the party. I guess also some kind of motivation or ideal. Doesn't
That's a
necessarily
bit
have to be
more
complex.
advanced, I
Yeah.
believe. I think.
Uh,
That's kind of like getting into more like villain, antagonist and whatever. Like
I
for
don't
the
think
base
it has to
shopkeeper,
be.
I don't believe that's completely necessary. Just for like NPCs that you're pulling up.
No, it's not necessary, but it's preferred. But I think it
Okay.
doesn't have to be for like the villain. I think for the shopkeep, for example, their goal or motivation, one shopkeep may be trying to sell their wares as quickly as possible, which means that they're probably selling them at a lower price. Another's
Okay.
goal or motivation might be to swindle the party for as much money as they have by deceiving them into thinking that their extortionate prices are reasonable.
Okay.
So that kind of, what are they aiming for overall, or more specifically from the party?
I
Because that
just
can
tried to
also,
argue you on it, but I completely agree.
yeah, I think
Completely.
the what you were picturing was more like a, what's their life goal
Yeah.
when I first said it. Yeah, but I do think something smaller scale that is going to dictate how the interaction goes, because you need to understand what that NPC is trying to get and how they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all just good world building,
it
really.
is. It
Like it's
really
not
is.
basics. It's kind of it's like intermediate level
Yeah,
of like world building. But honestly, if you consume enough media, if you practice enough, you should just be able to come up on the spot with inconsequential characters and quirks and wants and needs, just like as you go.
yeah.
So it shouldn't really, like at the start, if you are unpracticed, there's no shame in it. There's no shame in it, even if you're like really
No,
advanced.
it's completely unnecessary, I'd argue, but it's
Yeah,
very much fun to have.
and you will hopefully get better at it.
Yeah,
And I revel in like quickly thought up characters
yeah,
and like just fun ways to interact with the party.
yeah. I definitely agree. At one time, I spent several weeks where every day on this one document, I created one interesting character, just
Jesus.
completely randomly from the air. Um, no affiliation with any particular story or idea of where to put them. I just created a person. Some of them were, a bit more out there, but then some of them were just, here's generic Bob. This one interesting thing has happened in his life. You know, something that's just a bit interesting that makes the NPC a little bit more flavored than faceless, but that I could throw in at some point so I didn't have to come up with it on the spot if I needed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you advising that people do that?
I mean, it's one option. I think at the very least, a good approach to take is have a list of names, even if you don't have who they are, just a list of names, because in the moment, names can be difficult to come up with.
Yeah.
But just having a list that you can pretend that you're looking for this particular person from, and just go, oh, let me find his name here. And you go to your random list of names, and you just pull one name that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what
My
I
name is Daniel Humferbottom.
Perfect.
My name is Julian Fabish. Julian Fabish. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think you probably don't need to. I mean, the first idea of creating a document with a bunch of different people randomly, that kind of gets into a little bit of backstory, which I don't think NPCs need to start off with a backstory.
Okay.
I think
is it just to save the hassle whether or not, in case the party doesn't gel to them?
I mean, it could just be that the party isn't interested.
Yeah.
The shopkeep doesn't necessarily need to have a detailed backstory, but if the party decides to go back to the shopkeep several times and interact with them, then it may be worth giving the shopkeep a backstory.
Okay.
Yeah, like Jeoffered. He was a clothier. I didn't know that until the moment I think Igor asked, and then he was.
Yeah. Well, of course
Yeah.
he was. He made his own disguise. It made sense.
Yeah. So it worked around, and I thought,
Yeah.
you know what? That makes perfect sense. Now he is a clothier, or a clothier's apprentice, rather. Yeah. I think we've talked about the types of NPCs, talked about the bare minimum that they need, talked about what we prefer them to have, things like a quirk or a trait or something extra, and maybe some kind of motivational goal. If the party really likes interacting with this NPC, maybe some kind of backstory, even if it's not super detailed, just an idea of it. So we've gone through all of this effort, Lewis.
Yep.
Why should or shouldn't we just use an NPC generator on the Googles?
I mean, I do think that's a tough question because a lot of what NPCs are is in the moment arbitrary people. But I think generators are okay for the small people. And like even then that gives you a base to work off of. But if you are using an NPC generator for your main villain, unless it's for a name, like I think you should put a bit more care into them rather than just generating.
Yeah.
It's more generators are more convenient. I'd rather come up with them on the spot because I think it's funnier just to find out what quirk I can come up with on the spot. Like for the senile old woman, you guys really gelled with her.
We did.
Yeah, just I mean it's up to the DM completely whether or not they want to use the generator, but it's so much more fun to make your own.
It is. I have to agree. I think you can use a generator, and I definitely think generators are good for inspiration or for a starting off point if you can't come up with something.
Yeah.
I think they're good for either names or if you want a unique personality and you're coming up with the same idea again and again, going to a generator and looking at something fresh might be helpful. I think generators are good for inspiration, but I think you always need to tailor your NPC a bit more to the situation because they need to custom fit into your scenario. And I think giving it a unique touch from your own work is important.
Yeah. If they don't gel, the party will throw them down a well.
Straight into hell.
Straight into hell.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
So, final thoughts. DMPCs are a resource. Don't overuse them. And your players should be the stars of the show. Never overshadow them. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. As a cardinal rule of cool, the PCs are there for fun. The players are not there to sit around and, unless they're totally into it, listen to your NPCs battle it out. They are the ones playing the game. It is not a masturbatory exercise for you to submit your will upon your poor friends. They
Yeah.
are the ones playing the game. They are the ones having fun. You should obviously have fun alongside them, but that completely decides on how you decide to play the game.
Yeah.
What else?
I think really we listed the types of NPCs. The adversary, villain, shopkeep, quest giver, guide, expositionary, backstory, filler, and then DMPCs, which you've just talked about, which I think is a very good point. I think it's important to know that NPCs in general can fall into several of these categories if they just so happen to, or need to, or you want them to. I think looking at DMPCs versus NPCs in the party, the thing is, it should be the player's intentions that result in these DM controller characters being in the party, participating in fights. And as you said, the players and the player characters are the heroes of the story, not the people the DM controls.
Yeah. NPCs are ways to enhance the experience, not replace it.
No.
They are salt. Don't use too much salt.
I don't know, I like salt.
Well, you like salt, but salty. Ugh.
Yeah. I think we've got different types. We've got the DMPCs. I think it's important to know NPCs, kind of the reasoning behind the points we're making is that NPCs are there to interact with the party. They are tools for the DM to allow the party to express themselves. And that's kind of why they shouldn't be taking the star roles. Outside of that, we looked at bare minimum for an NPC. Kind of, I mean, it's not even necessarily necessary, but a name, always useful to have. And the relevant information that they need to serve the role that NPC has. So if it's a shopkeep, you need the information that a shopkeep needs in order to function as a shopkeep, and so on. And then we talked about what we'd prefer, which is kind of the motivation or goals on a small scale, usually, for these NPCs. A unique quirk or trait or something to make the encounter more interesting or fun in the moment, not necessarily memorable.
Doesn't need to be star stealing. I mean, don't want to nick the Grammy off of your bard, but it's always good.
Yeah. And then I think our final point was really NPC generators. They're good for inspiration, although I at least would advise building off of that and custom fitting the NPC to match the situation or scenario or world.
Yeah, I think that's kind of succinct.
I think that's it.
Not sure what else we could talk about.
I mean, I'm sure we will come back to NPCs. At the very least, because they tie into so much. I think they'll probably crop back up in world building. We might talk about villains at some point because you were getting pretty passionate there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love a good villain, which we will get to.
Yeah. Hopefully. If we aren't let go
Yep.
from our positions.
No, don't put the gag on yet. We're almost done. Just a sec. Okay. Yeah. My wrists are getting so burnt. These ropes
I
are
know.
awful.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
I don't have great blood flow, so it really doesn't help. It's a genuine issue. Other than that, I think we'll definitely come back to them in other videos, but that seems like NPCs.
Yeah. Well done us.
Well done us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are we going to do the outro? I mean, I'll go.
Seems like Lewis can't be giving an outro, so I guess I will before they get to my room. Thank you for listening. This has been a long session of recording, whether it's a long set of episodes even. I hope so. I hope it was split into several episodes, because otherwise you've been putting up with a lot. Hopefully you've learned some things about NPCs, the types, and the way they can be incorporated in your world. Good day.